Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr, and also now with Kevin Noon. First, Tom, how's it going?
Yeah, not so easy to start the show when you have to do it live, is it?
Kevin, let's talk to you.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Let's talk to me instead. Here, if I had a two-shot ready, we could just shuffle Tom off to the side, but I don't. But yeah,
So,
live television is a chore.
well, and we do it all the time. It's just now I'm looking at myself doing it, and I'm distracted by all of me. So here we are, Maryland weekend, Maryland week. We thought we would, when we're on the road, we do these preview shows live on YouTube, and we thought, hey, even though we're home, that doesn't mean we can't still do this and interact with everybody and interact with each other. That's the best part. Just getting to talk to these guys, because I don't get to do it enough. So, yeah, going to preview the Maryland game, take some questions, do what we do, and just have some fun. And Kevin, you did your weekly tale of the tape, so I'm just going to rely on you for all of the Maryland minutia, like on third downs from like the 40 to the 40s, between the 40s. How good is Maryland's defense? Stuff like that is what I'm going to need from you, Tom. I won't need anything from you, and then me and Kevin, as we said, we'll just continue. But now this is going to be. We did our staff picks, and I found them very interesting, and at least in terms of the final score. So let's just throw these out there right now so that people know. I went with 52-24. Tom, what did you go with?
I went with 48-24 Ohio State. Who'd you have winning in your 52-24?
Ohio State, same.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
And then Kevin?
I don't know, 1,000,000-3. I don't even remember. I wrote it a week ago, I think. I wrote it like walking out of the stadium from the Rutgers game. I think it was 49-24, and I regret giving Maryland that many points at this for where I feel I wrote it. I think before we knew Dante Demas' status and just having a chance to look at them without Demas, and I know we'll talk about that in a few, but yeah, I like Ohio State to cover. Wheeling Island, anybody?
No more Wheeling Island. But yes, you did have them 49-24. Tom has them 48-24. I, of course, have them correctly winning 52-24. It'll be interesting to see how things go as things are trending towards something 224, and we are furiously texting each other back and forth, rooting against the other person's picks, as you guys do. I don't necessarily do that. But let's discuss the thing here for me, this just comes down to Ohio State's pass defense and how much they have improved over the last few weeks. You can't tell anything by watching them defend the pass against Rutgers. But Tom, this week I think we'll know a lot more. Yeah, Dante Demas is out, but you still have Deshaun Jones. You got Raheem Jarrett. You've got other guys. You've got a very good quarterback in Talia Tagovailoa, provided he only throws it to his guys. But now we're going to find out about this pass defense, and not just the corners. But Ronnie Hickman as that second safety. Cameron Martinez tested as that cover safety. Lathan Ransom tested as the deep-ish field safety. So we're going to learn a lot more against for this defense against the Maryland passing game, and I'm leaning towards thinking things aren't going to be terrible. Tom, how are you leaning?
I think they're going to be better. This is the week that we find out how much better really is. They're going to be better than they were. They're not going to give up 400 and whatever yards they give up to Tulsa, I don't think. And if they do, it's a better team than Tulsa. So it's definitely progress. But this is the week we find out, like, are they almost all the way there? Or are they just a little bit of the way there? You feel like schematically they're doing enough different stuff that it's going to be at least a challenge for Talia Tagovailoa. It's going to be at least a challenge for Maryland's offensive coaching staff to figure out what Ohio State's doing, how to counter it, all that kind of stuff. It has not been a challenge in the past for several of the teams that Ohio State played earlier in the year. I mean, it was like pitch and catch. And you heard Alex Gleitman was talking to one of the staffers from Rutgers in the advance of that game and said, they were looking at it and going like, yeah, we can beat this team. We can absolutely beat this team, which if they're continuing to do the same exact stuff, yeah, it becomes very predictable. And there's always as Ross Fulton always says, There is a way to beat any individual coverage. But if you're mixing it up and you're running a cover 2 beater and you're running, they're playing cover 1 or cover 3, well, that doesn't necessarily work as well. So they're more unpredictable. You get the sense they kind of have the pieces in a better place right now, and they've sort of figured out where all the pegs, which holes all the pegs go in now, and they're less predictable. So they're going to be better. It's just, are they better where if they give up 7 points again this week or 13 points again this week, that's really going to mean something to me. I don't think they're going to give up 7 or 13 points, but they're going to be better enough that I think it's going to be encouraging, but still work to do.
Kevin, we're all predicting 24 points. I'm also expecting a better defense from the Buckeyes. Can those two things coexist?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm closing out the right microphones here. I think that we're going to see Ohio State take some steps in the right direction. I think we're going to see some things of where people are going to have a fit. We're going against what possibly could be the best passing offense that Ohio State's going to see for the remainder of the regular season. I'm not going to butcher the poor kid's name, so I'm going to just say Tua Jr. I think Tua Jr. can sling the ball around pretty well. As Tony mentioned, he's pretty good at slinging it to the other team as well. So as long as he can avoid the scarlet jerseys, even without Dante Demas, I think that there's going to be an opportunity for Raheem Jarrett and some of these other guys to be able to pick up some yardage. I think we're going to have to see if it's going to be a bend, don't break, or just a broke off our defense for Ohio State. And as long as the Buckeyes are able to force Maryland to either have to go for 3 or just, get some yards inside, from between the 30s, I think it's going to be better. I gave Maryland 24 points because I don't think everything's fixed. I think we're seeing a good rehabilitation process right now. I've had the opportunity to talk to Ross as well, not on shows the way that Tom has. And, we have talked a little bit about how we're getting away from as much cover 1, as much cover 3. I think Ohio State's doing a better job of playing chess out there with the opposing team. And because of that, I think that we can see a better defensive effort in general, but I don't think that everything is just fixed yet.
And I could see them having 17 points going into the fourth quarter, and I think that's still an relatively outstanding defensive performance. And then you get a late score to make it 24 or something like that. Ryan Day did mention that the pass defense, the pass rush, will be helped simply by the fact that the defense isn't tipping their hand as early as they were earlier in the season. And I wouldn't even say tipping their hand. I would just say like turning the cards over on the table and just letting everybody see what you're going to do. And then you try and play poker from that, and it doesn't go that well. And we saw that. And now the Buckeyes are like, you know what? Let's just leave the cards turned over, and then we'll try to play there. See if that helps. And it turns out it does. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how the adjustments work. Because if they don't work, then everything is devastated at that point. You're going to have to fix so much more, and you don't even know what to fix at that point. So I will side on the thought that things are going to be relatively okay, because you still have a ton of talent. You still have Denzel Burke. You still have Seven Banks, who I know hasn't been great this year, but it was interesting getting to talk to him this week, and I wasn't over there quite as much. I think, Tom, you were with him, just discussing how he's getting better. There's been so much drama surrounding him, but he said it's basically just injury stuff, right?
Yeah, it's just a function of he's had an injury. He had an injury in the spring. It kind of lingered into the summer. It kind of carried into the fall. And it's been the same injury the whole time. He just hasn't been 100%, and it takes a while to get up to speed. Ryan Day's talked about guys maybe needing to practice a little better. I think Seven Banks was one of those guys who needed to practice a little better. But, he sounds like he's coming along. He basically said, you ain't seen nothing yet. Like, you have not seen the last, the final version here. As someone who's been hurt, who's missed all this time throughout the course of the year, it's going to take a while to get up to speed. You're finally now maybe seeing him able to start getting up to speed. If you can add him, if Cam Brown can be healthy, which has not been a given this fall, if you can get Seven Banks closer to 100%, all of a sudden, this is a very different looking Ohio State pass defense, especially with some of the guys you talked about earlier with, Hickman and Ransom and Cam Martinez that back there behind them in the safety spots. That if you got those three corners who you can rotate and you can feel pretty comfortable with all three of those guys, this could be a very different looking Ohio State defense by the middle to end of this season than it was at the beginning. You're probably, this weekend's going to be a little bit of a challenge. Then you get a week off. Then you got Indiana the week after that, and Indiana has not have a particularly dynamic passing offense. So at this point, like if you can get those guys healthy in time for Penn State, I think that's probably going to be, that changes the season if those guys are really healthy and able to play up to their potential at that point.
Yeah, and we're seeing some questions coming in, so continue to send those in. We're going to discuss the offense right now, and then we'll get to some questions. Kevin, I get the feeling that the offense right now, the Ohio State offense, is ready to take off or continue taking off. CJ Stroud comes back, has one really good week. Am I wrong? Is it dangerous to think this is the real CJ Stroud at this point, and the offense, knowing what TreyVion Henderson can do? Gosh, if he had 12 carries a game instead of 8, there doesn't feel like I don't feel like there's much hope for defenses around the Big Ten when it comes to what the Buckeyes can be and what it looks like they are right now.
Yeah, we haven't seen the full power of this fully operational battle station at this point. We don't know really what this offense could do if they sat there and they took the brakes off of them, because for one reason or another, they've not been able to be full go. I mean, we've seen one game of what we assume is a healthy CJ Stroud, but that game was not coupled with a healthy dose of TreyVion Henderson. We've seen one game of where they were able to get Wilson and Olave both in the mix, but there's a lot of things that we haven't seen yet. And I think it's not a bad thing that we haven't seen all of it, because I don't, as they say, you don't want to empty the chambers. You don't want to sit there and just unload the gun at this point. Then everybody knows what you're capable of. I mean, sure, there's one thing to shock and awe and force all your future opponents to have to plan for this and plan for that and plan for something else. But, the element of the unknown, to a certain extent, as long as you're controlling it, you're controlling what's unknown, is not a bad thing. So, this offense is definitely ramping up, but it's not like it's been poor. I mean, I think we can go to the Oregon game and we can see a game that was completely out of balance. They weren't able to execute on both run and pass, and because of that, it was a very tilted type of affair, and Ohio State was held well below what its average is. But you look at everything else, and the Buckeyes have been able to succeed at a high level. The level of competition is going to rise on the other side of the open week, and we'll see what's going to happen there. But smoke them if you got them right now, and right now Ohio State's been smoking teams, so that's a good thing.
They have the number 2 total offense in the nation. I think the number 8 passing offense in the nation, 336.2 yards per game. The number 23 rushing offense, at 217.2 yards. Tom, if you're going to pick one of those, the 336.2 yards per game or the 217.2 yards per game, which do you see going up through Big Ten play, or do you see them both going up?
For Ohio State on the offensive side of the ball, I think.
Yes.
I mean, I think you're going to see the running number go up. I think you're getting into Big Ten weather time of year, where you're going to have the windy game, you're going to have the snowy game, you're going to have the cold game. I think Ohio State's going to lean on the run more, because you're going to see more TreyVion Henderson, and more TreyVion Henderson means more 50-yard TreyVion Henderson runs, 60-yard TreyVion Henderson runs. So as you get into that, I think you're going to be leaning more on the run just due to the weather. You're going to be leaning more on the run due to the fact that you have TreyVion Henderson, and you're going to be able to running him more than 8 carries a game, presumably. All of that to me suggests, and just in general, when in doubt, college football coaches, when things get a little tighter, are going to be wanting to lean on the run a little more. And if Ohio State's defense is better, and I think we're assuming it's better, they're not necessarily going to need to be putting up 50 points to win a game. So I think you're going to be, if anything, you're going to see the rushing number go up a little bit.
A lot of fourth quarter running the ball as well. Maybe we see the Master Teague, Marcus Crowley, where they just control the fourth quarter and throw another 80 yards there. I just get the feeling with the receivers, obviously, the running game, the offensive line coming together. Maybe that's the key. I think against Maryland, where they are one of the top teams in the nation in terms of sacks, Ohio State doesn't give up a ton of sacks. If Maryland isn't getting to the quarterback, then I see no hope for them in this game, unless CJ Stroud just throws some interceptions that he shouldn't. But you've got a Maryland defense that is going to be very interesting for Stroud. They are multiple. They'll play 3 down. They'll play 4 down, 1 high, 2 high. They do a lot of disguising of things. So this is going to be an important week. This will have to have been an important week of preparation for CJ Stroud to get ready for all of these different looks. We saw what he did against Rutgers, didn't seem fazed by anything. If he comes out this week, and Maryland's not a world beater, but they do some different things, and if he is able to process all of that and look good doing it, I'm looking at the rest of the Big Ten schedule and wondering, Kevin, where might the trouble come? I mean, yes, Penn State is going to be difficult, but I just right now, defensively in the Big Ten, I still think Ohio State has more offense than anybody has defense.
Yeah, I think it's not on the schedule at this point, but it could be Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. But there are a lot of people that want to sit there and sell on Ohio State and say that the Buckeyes aren't going to do this and aren't going to do that. And look, nobody predicts the Purdue upset. Nobody predicts the Iowa upset that have happened in recent years. So it's not a case of us being able to say, well, I saw that one coming from a mile away. I mean, we all look at the schedule and we say, well, that's a trap game and that's a trap game, but it's all well and good. You sit there and you call a game a trap game and Ohio State wins by 49 and nobody's going to remember it, but you sit there and you hit it. It's like, oh, I knew that was going to come. So yeah, I don't see anything on the schedule right now of where I see a team that's going to be able to slow Ohio State down to the point of if you're going to beat Ohio State, you're going to have to beat them 45-41 or something along those lines. I understand that Oregon, that was not a 45-41 game, but Oregon, I think, has just had more athletes than what most teams on Ohio State's schedule are going to be able to throw at the Buckeyes. So it's going to be a case of where Ohio State's going to have to beat Ohio State, and you're just going to have to outscore them by a dramatic number because the Buckeyes can just kind of roll out of bed and put up 35, in my opinion.
And to me, I think in addition to how many teams have the defense that can stop Ohio State, there aren't that many explosive offenses on the schedule. I mean, Michigan State's got a good offense. Michigan's got a good offense, but neither of those are teams that are just going to put up 50 points against like a Power 5 opponent. Like that's not how they're built. That's not what their offenses are meant to do. And even if you can run the clock, you're still okay. Instead of scoring 50 points, you got to score 38, 40 points. Are these teams that can score 38, 40 points against Ohio State? I mean, maybe. And, any given week, you never know what can happen. But there's not that many teams on the schedule that I look at and say, the defense there is strong enough and the offense there is explosive enough that I think they can hold Ohio State to, say, something in the low to mid 30s, and then they're explosive enough to score in the high 30s, low 40s, which is what you need to do to win at that point. That's a difficult combination, and Ohio State's fans are spoiled, and that's not a surprise. They've had a very, very, very good offense for the last, at least since Ryan Day got here in 2017, they've had a very good offense, very consistently, one of the most explosive in the country. And they've pretty consistently had at least a halfway decent defense. The 2018 defense wasn't particularly great. Last year's defense wasn't particularly great. The start of this year for the first couple of weeks wasn't particularly great, but it's like not particularly great. This is the worst defense in history. This is not like Mike Leach, Texas Tech. This is an Ohio State defense that probably, I haven't looked at SP Plus this week, but I think they were in like the 30s or so defensively in SP Plus. It's like, it's not great. This is not the 2019 defense, but it's fine and it's getting better. And, if, maybe there's a team on this schedule that can challenge them, but I don't really have anyone that jumps out to me as like, oh yeah, that's the definite trouble spot. And, Iowa, maybe Iowa can drag them down into an Iowa game. Iowa, a lot of those Big Ten West teams are kind of similar to me, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Iowa, when they're the good versions of themselves, they can play good defense, kind of drag you into their type of game. And, maybe that turns into a 27-24 Ohio State loss to Iowa, something like that. But it just, Iowa's not putting 50 on this team. I don't. So you would they have to win that with defense, and that's a very hard thing to do against this Ohio State offense.
There's only like 10 teams nationally who have punted the ball more times than Iowa, which I think that's pretty much where Kirk Ferentz wants to be nationally every year, like top 10 punting number of times. But let's go ahead and start getting to questions. Kevin, do you want to run this?
Yeah, I'll throw some in as I see them. Let me find them because they all kind of go into the queue
You want me to
haphazardly.
start with the while you're pulling those up, why don't I start with the one from our board?
Yeah.
Okay, so what was the most exciting regular season football game you have covered / attended involving Ohio State?
I think for me, it goes to the 2016 Michigan game, which was, it's the best rivalry in sports. It's overtime. The crowd is living and dying. You can feel the inhaling and the exhaling on your back as you're down there on the field in the final minutes. And then because we do get to go down there for like the last 5 minutes on the field, you're there for all of the overtimes, and you're walking from one side of the field to the other to stay with the ball. And you're right there when Curtis Samuel scores the game winner. You're on the other end when Michigan scores it to get it to overtime or whatever. And it's just it was a great experience, great atmosphere, and then you have to try to get from one corner of the end zone to the exact opposite corner amongst 100,000 people storming the field. I think that's it for me. This 2017 Penn State game was insane as well, but I always immediately go to the 2016 Michigan game for me. What about you, Kevin?
For me, I'm gonna take the low hanging fruit here and say the Alabama game in the Sugar Bowl. I mean, that one was pretty simple for the fact that Ohio State really had not broken through against the SEC, even though I certainly was there for the Arkansas game, the game that didn't take place, as they say. But Ohio State sneaks into the first college football playoffs, as they say, jumping from 6-4, and has to play Alabama, the number one, who's just supposed to be this juggernaut. And even with that being said, Ohio State comes out and has to settle for 3, where Alabama's getting 7s. But even when you're sitting at, 21-6, it felt like Ohio State had outplayed them. And then Ohio State roars back to take the lead, and then has to survive the punch. And just going through all of that. And I remember standing there and, as, dispassionate reporters, we're not supposed to be, involved in the situation, but I wanted to go to Dallas. I didn't want the ride to end. I wanted to be able to continue covering that team. It was a good time. So, Tyvis Powell intercepts that pass and he starts running. I'm like, get down, you idiot. I'm like, come on. So there was just so much involved with that. Plus you throw the whole situation of being in New Orleans and having to listen to a lot of talking Bama fans the whole time, and then just to see all that happen, I think easily that is my number one experience. But I'll throw it over to Tom, as I've taken the easiest answer off the board.
And by talking Bama fans, he means SEC talking Bama fans. They can't ever shut up about that. I'll go. I mean, I've got a couple that are older. I'm gonna take. This is like almost a tie between two games that are very similar to me: the 2002 Michigan game and the 1997 Rose Bowl out in Pasadena. I was just a fan for the 97 Rose Bowl. That was just those games are both very similar to me because they're very low scoring games. They were close games. They weren't like thrilling games. They were just kind of like close and high stakes the whole time, but it wasn't, people forget about that Rose Bowl because you just remember the last couple minutes. Before the last couple minutes, that game was what, like 10-7 or something, or 14-10, or I think it was 14-10. In the last 5 minutes of the game. That's a very low scoring game. The 2002 Michigan game, 14-9 was the final there. But they were both just so high stakes. The Michigan game obviously was Tressel's second year, and can he kind of follow up on that initial win at Michigan Stadium? and continue to break the John Cooper streak against Michigan with a chance to go play for the national championship and continue this like magical 2002 season. And the Rose Bowl, I mean, that was number 2 Arizona State versus number 4 Ohio State. And there was a national championship on the line because this was pre-BCS. And the Sugar Bowl was going to be number 1 Florida versus number 3 Florida, or number 1 Florida State versus number 3 Florida. And, that was the night after the Rose Bowl. So you're watching the Rose Bowl and going, if Ohio State wins this game and if Florida beats Florida State close, it was entirely possible we were going to have a split national championship back then. There was a ton on the line. Ohio State's winning most of the game. Arizona State goes all the way down the field, scores on that Jake Plummer sneak. And it was just, you got that. I mean, back in those days, it was just that here we go again, Ohio State feeling like, oh, you're not going to believe this, but a John Cooper team looked great. And then they blew it against Michigan and they blew it in a bowl game. Wow, what a shock. And then, you have like, your soul has like left your body watching this. And then Ohio State all of a sudden goes back down the field and they score the winning touchdown with, I don't know, what was it, 15 seconds left, 18 seconds left, something like that. And it was just like all of a sudden a switch flipped and it was like, this is not at all how this normally goes. So, and then I remember being on the airplane on the way home to Columbus the next night, and the pilot was like getting on the intercom and announcing the score of the Sugar Bowl every once in a while. And Florida got out to a lead and the plane is full of Ohio State fans and everyone's cheering. And then Florida's lead just keeps getting bigger and bigger in the crowd. And the cheers get kind of quieter and quieter as people go, oh crap, they're winning by too much. And now Florida's going to be the undisputed national champion. And I think Ohio State finished with like 1.5 votes or something like that in the AP poll that year. So Florida was crowned the national champion. But those were two that were pretty memorable and exciting finishes to me.
People don't remember like how you're exactly right, Tom, about back then Ohio State didn't make that last drive and it was just understood like, well, it was a nice thought. And exactly like, and then you have what happened against Michigan State in 98 or whatever. I even remember in 2002 when the Miami game, as the pass goes incomplete to end the game to Chris Gamble, thinking, well, this is just how things go for Ohio State. And then you see the flag and it's like, or is it? But yeah, people today don't even realize like the 2012 Purdue game or whatever could have never happened back then. Like, I don't know what changed things, but things have definitely changed.
Let me jump into some questions after I just finish welcoming Corey to the chat. Here we go. Razmataz, which defensive end or defensive ends pick up the pace? And we've had a couple of other questions. Gary Thomas got involved in that as well, so I don't want Gary to think we're blowing off his question as well.
Yeah, it's time for, I think we would all agree, it's time for Zach Harrison to get to the quarterback. We don't know yet if Tyreek Smith is going to go. We know Tyler Friday isn't. But if it's not Zach Harrison, you have Javonte Jean-Baptiste who has moments here and there, still hasn't really put it all together. I wouldn't be shocked if we start seeing more from JT Tuimoloau as he gets more comfortable. I do wonder if he is now just the starter. I think when Tyreek Smith comes back, he starts. But we've seen Jean-Baptiste back and healthy, and yet Tuimoloau is still starting opposite Zach Harrison. So I think with that experience, now do we start seeing JT getting to the quarterback more and becoming this havoc-wreaking player, Tom?
You think you would expect a pretty significant upward trend for him. I mean, that's kind of how it generally goes for freshmen. You start out at a certain level, and then as you get more experience, you get more reps, your level of play kind of slowly creeps up. That's sort of my general expectation with freshmen. And then, at some point they hit the freshman wall and then everyone goes, what's wrong with this guy? He's a bum. And then they, and then they kind of recover and then they're better again. And then everyone loves them again. To me, the answer to this question is Tyreek Smith, if he's healthy, or JT Tuimoloau. I mean, if Tyreek Smith can get healthy, I still think he's potentially a very explosive player there. He has just consistently not been healthy when he's been at Ohio State. When he has been, you go back to the Sugar Bowl last year, like he looked dominant in that Sugar Bowl game. He didn't record a ton of sacks. I don't know that he had any sacks in that game, but he was consistently putting pressure on Trevor Lawrence. He has that ability if he's healthy. If he can stay on the field, he can be that guy. But yeah, I'm with you. JT Tuimoloau is someone who he has looked explosive enough and impressive enough early in the season that I think there's just going to be that natural learning curve is going to continue, and you're going to get more production out of him as the season goes along.
Kevin, you going to say your neighbor Jack Sawyer?
Well, of course, because he's my neighbor, and I don't really see him around town anymore since he's over at Ohio State. But I read the comments here, and I try to stay away from some of them. Oh, this kid sucks, and that kid sucks, and it's not necessarily the direction I think that really helps the conversation at any point. So there are some guys that just haven't necessarily been able to get it done yet. And when you look at the competition between the defensive tackles and the defensive ends, and that the ends are barely on the board and that the tackles are getting it done, great for the tackles, but the ends should be there. And when was it Ryan Day that was asked if what his thoughts were about that, and then would he like to see more out of the ends? Yes, because it means we have more sacks. So getting more pressure is going to be important, whether or not that's Tyreek Smith or that's JJB or Jack Sawyer. But I think it's there. I think that what part of it is Larry Johnson, as he should. So that's on me. We have to, these guys have to win their individual battles. But I also think that there's a case of where teams are getting the ball out of their hand very quick, which is not helping Ohio State get home. And I just think that there's some things that they've been doing with the defense that necessarily wasn't getting it done. I don't know if you look at the 20 team and the subtraction from the 20 team to the 21 team and then say, well, these guys have all just regressed. I mean, the loss of Tyler Friday, in terms of not having him this year, that shouldn't be that huge difference maker at that point. Obviously you lose guys like Tommy Togiai on the inside and, a few others. But, I'm still kind of trying to figure out where the disconnect is. But I think that as the defense makes some schematic changes and some other changes, I think we'll see things starting to come up. Love to see Jack Sawyer, just another Pickerington kid, be able to get out there and get it done. But, I'll throw it at the feet of Zach Harrison, too. I mean, we talk so much about this being his year, and has it? I haven't seen it yet.
No, and the defensive tackles are, just imagine where the numbers would be if the defensive tackles weren't doing what they're doing. I wonder what happens when the offense starts accounting more for the pass rush from the inside, what that does for the guys on the outside, and how much more quarterbacks are getting pushed out into those defensive ends, which is one of the things Zach Sawyer said, or Jack Sawyer said. Yes, Jack Sawyer. There's too many acts and whatnot, but Jack Sawyer talked about that this past week about how, it's annoying to hear the defensive tackles talk about it, but as long as they keep pushing the quarterbacks, eventually they're going to push the quarterbacks right into the defensive ends, and I think we'll start to see some more of that. And if we don't, this is not great for Ohio State's pass rush when you think you've got these top 35 players, like Tyreek Smith was a top 35. Zach Harrison obviously was. You need something from the veterans. It can't all be a youth movement. So I think it's definitely key that you get something from these third, fourth, fifth year guys. What's next?
Thoughts on Emeka Egbuka? Has shown explosive ability on kickoff return. Is he a guy that Ryan Day should look at to get more touches?
Tom,
you guys.
Yeah, that's a question that Ryan Day was asked. That's a question that Ryan Day was asked this week, and he talked about the fact they love the explosiveness that Egbuka shows, and you saw that against Akron with that 85-yard gain. I mean, that was the fourth longest play in Ohio State history. Somehow wasn't a touchdown, which is like what? How? But yeah, that was a good one, and but yeah, I mean, you've seen him on the kick return as well. Day said, you're seeing it where it's like, he hasn't gotten very many opportunities, which is good. That's actually good for Ohio State if the kick returner doesn't get a whole lot of opportunities, because it means the other team's not kicking it off very much, which means the other team's not scoring it very much. So it's a little paradoxical that Ryan Day would love to see Emeka Egbuka get more opportunities, but he doesn't want to see Emeka Egbuka get more opportunities because it means the other team's scoring. But he said, when Egbuka has had opportunities, he's had several that he's like almost hit, like it come very close to hitting. And, they're playing him there because they recognize that he's not going to have that many opportunities on offense because you've got such a good top three at wide receiver. Plus, you're not taking TreyVion Henderson off the field, in meaningful spots, probably probably moving forward. You're not taking TreyVion Henderson off the field. They don't want to take Jeremy Ruckert off the field. So you're not running a ton of 4 wide out sets. So with Chris Olave, with Garrett Wilson, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, there aren't that many opportunities for Egbuka on offense. But obviously, Ryan Day recognizes the explosive playmaking he has. We had seen TreyVion Henderson back returning kicks all through preseason camp, and then during that first game against Minnesota, TreyVion Henderson was back there returning kicks, and then all of a sudden it was Egbuka, and I think that was kind of partly a reflection of, hey, TreyVion Henderson's going to get his opportunities for touches on offense, and kind of keep him healthy as best you can, but also you've got another guy back there who that may be his best opportunity to get kind of consistent touches this year, before some of those other, when Olave and Garrett Wilson leave after this year, then he's going to have more opportunities on offense. But for now, that may be his best avenue to kind of getting a chance to make a play.
Yeah, there's just so few touches for Egbuka on offense because he is the backup to Jackson Smith and Jigba, who plays a lot. And then that's also the third receiver / second tight end. So just that position gets that second teamer at that position gets pushed to the side a lot. So you got to find ways to get them involved that aren't just in the fourth quarter. And I think it is just a matter of time before he busts one. He's similar to Paris Campbell, who just had a knack for it. Paris, I don't know, he never obviously returned a kickoff for a touchdown, but he had over a 90-yarder for at one point. He had some 50-yarders and was able to find lanes. Had to give up kind of doing that because I think concussions and just took some hits to the head, and so they obviously it wasn't worth it to do that. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of time. I asked Jackson Smith and Jigba about Egbuka's like 85-yard catch and if the guys gave him some grief for getting caught from behind. And would you believe, yes, his teammates busted him on that and gave him some grief for getting caught. But, I guess 85 yards isn't too bad, just not good enough if you want to be a member of Zone 6.
Yeah, I couldn't run 85 yards in 85 minutes, I don't think. I mean, that just sounds
85 consecutive yards.
Yeah, no, pass. I'm gonna run 2 questions at once because they're about the same player. We'll start with I'm assuming New England Patriots. Any Pats 11? Do we know the current status of Palaie Naote? Is he ready? Naote. Is he ready to play this week? And I had a second one in here from Sam Maloney. Our thoughts on Palaie, 5-star player, started at SC. It's limited playing time due to not being acclimated with the system. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I thought we'd see him more.
I think the problem with, and we don't know if he's going to play yet. The availability report will come out tomorrow morning. His issue right now to me is that he is in this scheme had to be brought along as Ohio State's Sam linebacker which is more of a short yardage guy. And they don't really play that position much because they've got Ronnie Hickman as the bullet. And so it's either Ronnie Hickman or it's Palaie Naoteote. And they, if they have a bunch of 3rd and 1s, then you would see more of Naoteote. But as long as it's like 3rd and 4 or whatever, and then you're not getting down to the goal line, they're not really going to play him much as part of that heavier package. I don't know if they're going to start working him inside. Right now, you figure they might want to because of how thin they are. But at this point, can he handle more? And part of the issue was he wasn't eligible for the longest time, so you didn't want to give him too much. Couldn't ask him to do too much. Probably couldn't even get him involved on the inside because those are reps that need to go to guys who are definitely going to play. So maybe now they can work him in some. I don't know. What do you think, Tom?
You almost have to try and kick him inside at least a little bit because there's so little depth there. I mean, all of a sudden they're no more Dallas Gant, no more Kayvon Pope. There's not a ton of depth inside there, and you're like 1 or 2 injuries away from being real like desperately thin there. And you're right that the defense in general has sort of trended away from having a guy like him on the field. I think they may have, if you had told them in August he's going to be eligible, how much do you think he's going to be playing in late September, early October? They probably would have told you more than he has been. But that's, the defense has been sort of trending a little bit away from the bigger linebacker thing. And Ronnie Hickman, I think, has become a bigger part of this defense than we thought he was. I do wonder if they kick him inside and maybe Craig Young becomes more of that sort of run support linebacker type person, and then you move now to Otea inside and have him sort of help provide depth with Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg and Taraja Mitchell and all those guys. One thing we don't know, as you said, we don't know whether he's expected to play. My general rule of thumb on this stuff is if someone's a game time decision, and he was listed as a game time decision last week at Rutgers, my assumption is if you're a game time decision 1 week and you haven't further re-aggravated the injury, you're probably more than likely going to play the following week. If it was close enough that they didn't have you as unavailable, they listed you as a game time decision, it probably was not a super severe injury. And with another week, presumably you're going to be good to go if needed. So I would say better than 50-50 that he plays, but we have not heard anything officially yet.
Yeah, and with the loss of Kayvon Pope and Dallas Cant, it makes sense to see if now Teote can play some inside as well.
Going through the questions right here. Let's go.
Hey, if somebody wants to throw in a super chat question, we'll get right to it. Like you go to the front of the line. That's a fast pass for you.
I'll even delete a question of your choice if you go to the super chat. I might even kick Tony out of the show. I mean, we'll figure that one out. But
hang on, how do I do super chat? Hang on.
What are the chances we see a backup quarterback come in tomorrow?
Tom.
I mean, if we're all correct and we're all, we were all in the 48-24, 49-24, 52-24 kind of range. If that's the case, I think you're going to see one. Not a ton. I mean, if CJ Stroud is healthy and, we have no reason right now to suspect that he's not, then you would assume you're going to get 3 quarters at least out of CJ Stroud, and you're probably playing into the fourth quarter. But, if they're up by 24 points, 30 points, something like that, you're probably seeing a little bit of Kyle McCord there in the end, the end part of the game, because they do want to continue to get him reps, but you also have to kind of build up the number of reps for CJ Stroud because he's still relatively early in his career. I mean, he feels like he's been the starter for quite a while because we've been talking about him as the presumptive starter for a while, but he's really only played they've only played 5 games so far, and he's only played 4 of them. That's just not a lot of reps, and he didn't get very many reps last year either. So I think you're going to see CJ Stroud probably, assuming he's healthy, play a little deeper into this game than you might expect given the score and the game state. But I do think there's a decent chance, unless Maryland keeps this a lot closer than we're expecting, I think there's a pretty good chance you see Kyle McCord at some point tomorrow.
We're all around the 24, 28 point mark. I think that's still a point where the starter stays in the entire time. However, Kevin, it's also an opportunity if you want to throw Kyle McCord out there for a drive and let him throw the ball and get some experience. It's not such a blowout that throwing the ball at that point is classless and Bila Mian, that sort of thing. It's like we're just trying to get the guys some reps and some throws, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you see that where it's not just a handoff, take a knee type of thing, Well,
I mean, Ohio State isn't that far removed from 73-14 against these guys, and obviously other factors that were kind of talked about there, 52-51, Chase Young, so on and so forth. But and then Maryland doesn't even play them last year. So, the last time these two teams were out there on the field, Ohio State put up 21 points in the first, second, and fourth quarters. So there certainly is the opportunity that, you don't necessarily want to, with a divisional team that you're playing yearly, have that type of thing going on there. But I think the chasm between Ohio State and Maryland is still pretty significant, and Ohio State's got to work on getting better and doesn't have a game the next week with the open week. So why not allow a backup quarterback to get out there and actually run the offense? Maybe he's running the offense with the number 2 offensive line, but I think we've already seen that Ohio State's number 2 offensive line is probably better than a lot of number 1 offensive lines out there. And Ohio State's number 2 wide receivers are probably a lot better, say it with me, than a lot of other teams' number 1 wide receivers. So there's no reason that he can't go out there and run with the 2s and still not be able to perform at a pretty high level. But if you go student body left, student body right, we're going to get what we expect to see, and then everybody will just be on and ready to go watch that Iowa-Penn State game.
They were 42.5 point favorites against Maryland in 2019 and end up covering by about 17 points. covering the spread by, So what's next?
Here we go. Speaking of Penn State and Iowa, who's the bigger threat to OSU?
This is interesting to me because there's been a bunch of talk on the board about who should we root for, who should the Buckeye fans root for in this game. And in terms of the bigger threat to Ohio State, I think Penn State has more talent. Iowa might be more just, I don't know, solid, more annoying, maybe is the better term. But I think overall, the bigger threat is probably Penn State because of Jahan Dotson, and they are maybe starting to run the ball a little bit better. Defensively, they do some different things, whereas Iowa, you kind of know what you're going to get, and I don't know that they have enough of everything to score. I don't know how many points would they need to score against Ohio State, like 34. Can they score 34 when you know exactly what you're going to get, and that kind of makes it easier for Ohio State to prepare, whereas Penn State will do some different things. I think Penn State is the bigger threat. I also think maybe, given what Iowa is going to do the rest of the season at Wisconsin, doesn't look like as big of a game as it used to. Iowa could very well be 12-0 going into the Big Ten championship game, and I think maybe that's what Ohio State fans should be rooting for. Root for Iowa over Penn State this weekend, because Penn State could lose a few games the rest of the way, and Ohio State beating them won't look as good as Ohio State beating number 3 Iowa in their push to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's even really a question to me, because, I mean, you look at Penn State's remaining schedule. They got Iowa, but they also got Michigan. They also got Michigan State. They got Ohio State. Iowa has Penn State, and then a bunch of Big Ten West teams, which, let me tell you something about the Big Ten West. Do you know who the second best team in the Big Ten West might be this year? Nebraska. Like that, Nebraska might be 3-3 Nebraska. Who's better? I'm going to keep talking, and when I'm done talking, you can tell me who's better in the Big Ten West than Iowa and Nebraska.
I'm out.
So here's if Iowa wins out, then they're number 3 Iowa when Ohio State plays them in the Big Ten championship game. And this whole conversation presupposes that Ohio State makes the Big Ten championship game, because otherwise it doesn't matter. So if Ohio State makes the Big Ten championship game, they're playing number 3 Iowa. If they play a close, gross Kirk Ferentz special and it ends up 24-23, then you have just beaten the number 3 team in the country, and that's a far better win than anyone else is going to get that night. Who is Oklahoma going to play in the Big 12 championship game that's going to be anywhere close to that level of a win against Iowa? Who's Oregon going to play in the Pac-12? No one. There's no one. And like the ACC is going to be what, Wake Forest and I don't know, Pitt. Like, okay, cool, hook 'em. Like, great. So it just you go through, and it's just, to me, I don't think it matters that much. Any of the individual Big Ten East teams, there was a thread on our board recently about does Ohio State really need Michigan to be really rolling going into that Ohio State? No, they don't. It doesn't matter. Either Penn State or Michigan State or Michigan is going to end up winning enough games that they're 10-2 at the end of the regular season. It's quite possible multiple of those teams are 10-2 at the end of the regular season. If Ohio State has multiple wins over 10-2 teams, those are going to be like top 15 teams. And you beat number 3 Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, like, there is, unless Oklahoma runs the table and Cincinnati runs the table and Alabama and Georgia are both 12-0 going into the SEC championship game, like, I don't know the scenario there that Ohio State, barring that particular set of circumstances, in which case they're hosed already. Outside of that, if Ohio State beats a couple 10-2 top 15 kind of teams and beats number 3 Iowa in the Big Ten championship game, like, I don't see them getting left out if they're 12-1 at that point.
Throw in a number 6 Michigan at 11-0 as well the week before. Buckeye fans, I'm just telling you, root for Michigan. Just always root for Michigan, except one time a year. I'm sure you can all get behind that, right, Kevin?
How do I get out of this show? I mean, seriously,
I've been asking that for years.
I was going to say, Tom's all about Nebraska. Tony, I don't even know you anymore.
So who's better than Iowa and Nebraska in the Big Ten West? I talked for quite a while, so you had plenty of time to think. Go ahead.
I was talking to somebody about Portugal. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I was like, I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to get a free sofa to crash on in Portugal. Now I just have to figure out how to get there. No, Iowa's the easy answer. Iowa, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
one.
willing.
Okay.
I'm
Who's
not
two?
willing, and let me put myself on the single shot so I don't have to look at you guys. I'm not willing to sit there and take some win over a bad Northwestern team and be like, Nebraska's back. They're garbage. They're terrible. They're terrible. They are the Jack Cohn of football teams. They're terrible. And Tony understands that joke because that's been a running joke for a while. When anything I don't like is Jack Cohn. So, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Cohn, if you're watching the show, by the way. But I'm not ready to say anything. I've watched Nebraska play all season long. And look, week 1 and week 2 Ohio State is not week 5 and week 6 Ohio State. And you shouldn't sit there and say that week 1 and week 2 Nebraska is week 5 and week 6 Nebraska. But Adrian Martinez is a liability. Nebraska doesn't have any other quarterbacks. Nebraska can't play defense consistently. Granted, I think a lot of people could take Nebraska out of that sentence and put Ohio State in, and that's kind of what we've heard in the national narrative. But I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think that Nebraska is third best, but I don't know who the second best is. I mean, maybe that old test pattern that's on, WUAB at 4 a.m. is better than any of those teams, but the West is terrible. It's terrible. I think that the American Conference could go in and run roughshod over most of the Big Ten West. So I don't know. All I know is it's not Nebraska. It's just not. And and that's a hill I'm willing to die on.
Let's see. I'm not arguing that Nebraska is fantastic. I'm saying there's no one better than Nebraska outside of Iowa in the West. Because is it the Minnesota team that lost to Bowling Green? Is it the Wisconsin team that literally cannot stop turning the ball over? Is it Illinois? Is it Northwestern? Is it Purdue? I bet it's Purdue. Yes, I bet Purdue. Like no. It is Iowa, and then a huge chasm, and then Nebraska, and then I don't know anyone else. I don't care. But anyway, we've taken this. We definitely need to stop talking about the Big Ten West. I can see that the view numbers are dropping as we talk more about Illinois football.
We've actually gone up about 40 people, so they must be masochists too. I don't know.
Bunch of sickos. Let's talk UConn, UMass, everyone.
No, one step above that.
The Vandy UConn game from last week, that was a real barn burner.
I want you guys to give your picks on Michigan at Nebraska. I am on the record. I am taking Nebraska. I think as long as Adrian Martinez doesn't turn the ball over,
what could possibly go wrong?
Nebraska by 10. I think the running game is there. Defense has been good enough. Michigan's going to have to step some things up. I'm going Nebraska. I can totally see this being like a 24-point win for Michigan. At some point, Scott Frost has to get something right. And I'm throwing all of my faith, my blind, stupid faith, in the corner of Adrian Martinez. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I realize I just went on the stump for Nebraska being the second best team in the Big Ten West. I don't believe in Nebraska yet. I just think the rest of the Big Ten West is exceptionally bad. I think Nebraska is better than their record right now. They're 3-3. If they played Illinois again, they beat them. They very easily could have beaten Michigan State, and they gave Oklahoma a good run. They have not gotten blown out yet this year. The defense is good enough. If the offense can hang on to the ball, absolutely they can win this game. I'm just like, I want to see it. I want to see a Scott Frost team beat a superior opponent. Like, they have shown me that they're better, that they can give a better team a good run. I want to see it before. I don't totally believe in Michigan either, but I want to see it before we get to before I actually cast my lot with Nebraska.
Tom's Wi-Fi doesn't even want to hear this. It started cutting out on him. But I want to thank Razmataz for his super chat contribution of $25 for us to go get ourselves some pizza, or a pizza. So he must mean Donato's, because an average Donato's pizza is about $25. But Razmataz, thank you so much for your super chat contribution. Be sure to fire in your freebie question. We'll push everybody else down with that. But if you don't want to hear Razmataz's question, you throw in a super chat, and this will be like Hal at the Moon and the dueling piano bar. So let's get that going.
2501 to get that question off the board.
This wasn't a question I was going to immediately go to, but Sam Maloney wants to know who would win a boxing match, Tom or Tony. And Slangin' and Bangin' has an opinion that it would be better than Wilder Fury 3.
Here's the funny thing. Just because Tom and I talk like we hate each other, I don't hate Tom. I can't speak for him.
I was going to say, oh, this is a bid on your end? Oh, sorry. That's awkward. Sorry.
Well, I guess I'm just following your lead then, Tom. The love you take is equal to the love you make, as Paul McCartney said. So, or the hate you take. It equates. No, there's no violence here, unless I end up getting stuck on the cot of shame. In which case, I may pout, I may throw some things, but fortunately, we don't have to worry about that happening.
And now we're gonna find out for sure. Yeah, I think it's a competitive match because Tony's got reach on me. Tony's a couple inches taller than me, so I think he's got a little reach advantage. I think I've probably got a little more agility, a little more stamina. So I think if I can survive the first couple rounds, I think I like my chances there.
I like Tony's ability to jab. Unfortunately, they're verbal jabs and not physical jabs. So I'm gonna load up like I loaded up on WVU the other week on Tom and probably lose. So I don't know.
Did you have to bring up West Virginia? I mean, I had forgotten about it.
These people all want an insight into what happens on the road. They love the scoop eats. I think they probably want to know about the scoop beats. And WVU was a bad beat. So there you go. Here's another question. I don't know who put it on, but I asked the board who would they rather have the dream date with, Tom or Tony? And I did get a couple of answers in here. None of them that I can really repeat at this point. But
wow, what a surprise!
Matt Maynard said that the show was really good with what the combo was here. Probably didn't have anything to do with the date. Oh, I think I lost the other one, but I'm going to jump in with a good friend of the show, Jordan Kapler, talking about the cot of shame, wanting to know who was going to end up with that. Yes to both. I haven't. Each of you, what is your biggest, boldest prediction? Since I'm not involved in the piece, I avoid it. I don't want to read it because I'm not allowed to play your little reindeer game. So, what are your biggest, bold predictions that we should be watching for that each of you will be texting me individually about during the game, saying to heck with the other guy because I got this going.
That's so funny because me and Kevin sit next to each other in the press box. He has no idea what all of the picks are, and I'm talking to him. I got that one. Oh, I think Tom has. And it's like now I almost feel bad for just constantly talking to Noon about this because I'm sure he wants to say shut up, but also if he did, he would because he's not afraid to do that. He does it a lot. I think my most interesting bold prediction is that Jesse Mirko will have a punt down between the 17 and 20 yard line. And Tom, just so you know, and I wrote this in the 5 predictions piece, a touchback counts.
That absolutely does not count. That
absolutely does.
Downed between means it means a person downs the punt. You're not downing the punt in the end zone. False.
Where does the ball start? Where does the possession start?
It's not where is the ball downed? Learn how to write a verbal little trap door for yourself if you're going to do it correctly. False. Nope. Not a chance. We do 5 and then we do a couple bonus ones for higher points. My bonus ones were someone on Ohio State other than CJ Stroud throws a touchdown pass and Ohio State scores on a trick play. So what I'm really hoping is TreyVion Henderson, halfback option pass, and I hit both of those in one shot. And if I do, you'll be like, who's the fat guy doing cartwheels on the sidelines? Friends, you will already know who the fat guy on the sidelines doing cartwheels. Is that a really fat Ohio State cheerleader? No? Who is that? What's going on?
Nah, well, never mind. I was going to come up with a joke, and I just decided to, being somebody who's a little portly themselves, I wasn't going to run there. Dakota, thank you for your Super Chat contribution. He would like to know who will be the first quarterback to transfer. And we already have some people jumping in. We've got Jack Miller from a couple of people. Kyle McCord. I don't think any of us necessarily like to assign anybody to the transfer portal before they make their declarations. I do think that this roster of 4 quarterbacks will be down to 3 by the end of the season. Not all 4 going to ride. I don't see C.J. Stroud being the guy. I don't see Quinn Ewers being the guy. Make of that what you will.
So are you saying that before the end of the season, a quarterback will transfer?
No, I don't see any upside right now at this point. And sure, a couple of these guys don't have enough games played to where that they've earned the year. But if I'm going to learn somewhere, I would still learn under Ohio State's system. I mean, Joe Burrow, everybody wants Joe Burrow this and Joe Burrow that. Jordan mentions Joe Burrow right there as well. Why not learn within the Ohio State system? I don't think, Joe Burrow was made by Joe Brady. He certainly wasn't made by Ed Orgeron, and the fact that we haven't even talked about his radio show and burying somebody in the bayou or whatever the hell that was all about. Joe Burrow is successful at LSU in spite of Ed Orgeron. So why not soak up as much as you can at Ohio State before you go to another venue? I don't think that leaving October 31st is going to be significantly different than leaving February 1st.
Well, and there's no reason to leave, because especially if you're not going to burn your 4 games, like, okay, let's just say, we'll talk about Jack Miller, because that was the first person someone brought up. He's your third string quarterback, so he's not likely to play 4 games more than 4 games, unless they really want to push him. And if he doesn't really want to get pushed, if he's still kind of like half in, half out, he's probably not going to get pushed in for more than 4 games. So there's no real reason to leave if you're not going to burn that year anyway. And you still have an opportunity to win a pair of gold pants, win a Big Ten championship, potentially go to the college football playoff, potentially win the college football playoff. Like, there's no reason to jump off the merry-go-round right now. There's no real downside to sticking around. Maybe you can work your way back up the depth chart. And if not, then, you didn't work your way back up the depth chart. And then, you can, make a fully informed decision at the end of the year. So I don't really see anyone jumping off now. I don't think there's any real reason to, because it's not like you can, go leave right now and enroll at UCLA in the middle of the semester. Like, you can't go join UCLA in the middle of the season. So that doesn't really do you any good if you're going to go transfer somewhere else. So yeah, I would definitely not expect anyone leaving in the middle of this season.
I do think it will be, in terms of, because I agree with Kevin, it's not going to be CJ Stroud. I don't think it's going to be Quinn Ewers. Is it, say, Kyle McCord believes he should be starting somewhere right now, and so he goes and does that? Or is it Jack Miller seeing the fact that he's at least the third quarterback with a fourth quarterback chasing him, and he wants to go have a better shot somewhere else? Does he leave to go compete for somewhere, whereas Kyle McCord leaves to go start somewhere? I think, it just depends on their demeanor, how long, obviously, they want to wait around. I still see a scenario where Kyle McCord sticks around, starts for 1 year, leaves for the NFL after his redshirt sophomore year. Then you've got Quinn Ewers stepping in as I don't know if he'd be a redshirt freshman at that point or a redshirt sophomore at that point, technically, I guess. And then he could start and then go do it, whether he wants to start for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Like, there is an avenue for all of those guys to play, not for all 4 of them to play, though, I don't think. Unless Jack Miller or whomever stays around and starts as like the 5th-year senior for a year. In this age, to expect a 5th-year senior quarterback who isn't JT Barrett, I think that is gone for a while.
Let me jump into another question.
Yeah, the JT Barrett type quarterback. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the JT Barrett type quarterback, I think, is kind of done at Ohio State. Like, you look at JT Barrett now, and it's like you're looking back at like Greg Fry or Greg. I mean, like, it's just like that's not what the Ohio State offense is under Ryan Day. It's not what the Ohio State offense has really been since Day got there, and the first year looked like the first year because Day had just gotten there, and you still had JT Barrett. They're not running QB power anymore. Urban Meyer is not walking through that door. That's Trevor Lawrence's problem now, not CJ Stroud. So I don't think you're going to see a quarterback like JT Barrett. The quarterbacks he's recruiting are too good, too big, too strong of an arm, too talented, and going to put up too big numbers to be sticking around for 5 years.
And you're also signing quarterbacks every year because you're going to lose some.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Butch Jones would like to see a Tony's Tips segment, like the best Mexican restaurants in the Columbus area. I think the place with the reddest ketchup. I don't know. Tony?
With the La Casita on Bethel, that's pretty good. Is that what it's called, right?
Right? Yeah.
Senior Antonio's up on 23, past 270s, very good. There's a little place called Taco Bell, anywhere, everywhere. Also, if you've got a local Moe's, if you just want, you're tired of Chipotle, Moe's is also good. Kevin, I see you already seething with anger. What's wrong?
Nothing. Hate you. I hate you. Come on. No, La Casita is pretty good, but just right there, right on, pretty much almost at the same intersection as Los Gauchos, which was a former food truck and now is a couple brick and mortar places. They've got some tacos al pastor there that are fantastic, but Columbus is a terrible city in terms of just really good Mexican food. I guess I'm spoiled growing up in LA and living in Dallas for 5 years as well. I think that, not to turn this into Food Network or Scoop Eats or anything, but I think we have so many places that are making what they think everybody wants to eat and not what
Hmm.
staff actually eats. So they all have a carbon copy menu and the red sauce is weak and this and that and the other. So um, I would love to see a situation where Scoop Eats is able to go to a city with some good Mexican food and for us to be able to do something in depth there. Maybe El Jeff's, and Tony and Tom understand what that joke is. There was a place next to Are You Hungry? And as we were coming around the corner, I called it's called El Jefe, the boss, but I called it El Jeff's just to get a rise. So then I kind of got grief about it. And as we were done with our fat sandwiches, I'm like, I would have rather have gone to El Jeff's, to be honest.
Very much so. Very much so.
We're at an hour 6 right now, so let's kind of bang through a couple more. Razzmatazz, how many passes does Maryland throw tomorrow? I think it's going to be a big number because they can't run.
Yeah, over 50
All right.
if they're moving the ball.
Okay, Gary, and he fixed this one to say DEs, not TEs. But thoughts on whether we see more blitzes? We kind of talked about the effectiveness of the defensive end. Do we see Ohio State send more pressure?
Tom.
I think so. I mean, I think they need to get to the quarterback one way or the other, and I don't know that necessarily makes the defensive ends more effective because the way they do it a lot. This is something I talked to Ross Fulton about on the Morning Scoop on Friday. They'll sometimes drop those defensive ends into coverage and bring pressure from somewhere else. So you're still rushing the same, 4 guys, but you have a defensive end dropping back into coverage, and then you have like the left tackles just blocking air, and you've got a linebacker whizzing past him because he was looking for the defensive end, and all of a sudden the defensive end's not rushing. So that's another way to confuse the defense. So I do think you're going to see them continuing to mix up how they're bringing pressure because they know, I don't think they feel they can totally trust the defensive backs to, cover for 5 seconds. Like that's asking a lot. So I think you are going to see more pressure. I don't know if that turns into bigger numbers from the defensive ends or not. I mean, kind of depends on how they bring the pressure. They don't blitz 6 guys all that often. So that's I think where you would see maybe bigger numbers coming for the defensive ends where, maybe someone has to choose, do I block the defensive end? Do I get the guy coming off the edge? I don't think that that's going to materially impact the defensive end numbers, but I think you are going to see more different types of pressure, more guys coming.
I wonder how conflicted the Ohio State coaches are in terms of being aggressive and then watching Iowa last week, which doesn't necessarily blitz all that much, and they just go with 4 and they cover, and they intercepted 5 passes. So it's like, do we really want to put the defense in a bad situation by trying to put the offense in a bad situation, or do we just sit back and wait for the football to come to us? And I don't know that you can expect that again this week. I think maybe Talia Tagovailoa is just, will he be more careful? I don't know. I think he'll be more, hey, don't throw interceptions this week kind of minded. We'll see if it works.
I want to thank Yakov for the super chat contribution, insinuating that we're all fat or something, saying that it's the largest beat here in American sports. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know. But he does have a question that came after that. Do you think a Jerry World or Mercedes-Benz like stadium could be built on a college campus? That's a lot of money. I mean, I'll throw like SoFi in LA. I mean, we're talking billions with a B. it feels very sterile. I mean, those are great buildings, they're great venues, but they're great pro venues. I don't know if it necessarily is going to be the place that I'm wanting, that, you know, that fall crisp air and the sounds of the band and everything else. I'm not in favor of it, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm yeah,
Tom, go.
I don't care for those NFL stadiums at all. Like the Cotton Bowl, of all the bowl games we've gone to recently, the Cotton Bowl is my least favorite. It's just like, it's like there's a big TV, and hey, it's so big, and it's just like they're all kind of the same. They're all like, college venues are supposed to be unique. They're supposed to be different. It's supposed to be like, this is reflective of this school. It's just like, oh, here's another NFL stadium that looks basically the same. Like, some of them are fine. I like Lucas Oil in Indianapolis. Like, that's perfectly fine. But like, I have absolutely no excitement whatsoever to go to Jerry World again. Like, I would rather go to the Rose Bowl. I'd rather go to the Sugar Bowl, which at least like there's some history in that building. We've never gone to Atlanta. That's the only New Year's Six Bowl I think that we have not been to in the last, like since 2017. So yeah, that's the only one I haven't been to. So I have to kind of vote vote present on that one, and not give you a thumbs up or thumbs down. But it's just like, we've been in the big fancy NFL stadiums, and that does nothing for me. And yeah, I mean, you're right. It's like, it's way too expensive. You don't see the college teams you see building new stadiums right now are like UAB, Colorado State. Like, they're building much smaller, scaled down versions of stadiums from like what, no one's building Ohio Stadium now. No one's building Michigan Stadium or Beaver Stadium right now, or Bryant Denny. They're kind of updating stuff, but no, I don't think you're ever going to see a purpose-built on-campus stadium that's some multi-billion-dollar thing.
Yeah, Ohio Stadium cost what, $1.2 million in 1922 or whatever, and you got to keep adding to it and making it structurally sound. I agree with Tom. Campus venues are so much better. Campus games are so much better. You get into an NFL stadium and you lose everything in terms of the experience. It's split crowd, it's corporate. Whereas you go to Northwestern, you go to Purdue, even Rutgers, the crowd there, you feel it. You can't feel the weather change in an NFL stadium other than just the walk to the game. Except these are all like, there's no weather change in Miami. You don't. There's no football feel to it, and so I think you utilize the venues in terms of the weather. Would I rather see a dome in Minnesota? Of course, unless we only play there, we only go there in September. But yeah, I don't like on campus is so much better, and I don't think that there's not enough big money donors who are you can get like two donors who are like, yeah, let's each throw in 750 million and then get this built. It's never, just not going to happen, because all of the new stadiums that get built are basically city tax money. So
that was a lot of money back in 1955 when they built it, and it really pissed the Kaiser off. So, but speaking of a lot of money, Ryan Dawes, thank you for your super chat contribution. Late to the party, go Bucks. This show's been a real big success. I don't think it's going to be the last time you're going to see the live Buckeye Weekly leading into the game. I know I've had a lot of fun. I'm sure Tony and Tom have had fun at each other's expense. But it's been a good show. We got a couple more questions if everybody is up to it, as they've been coming in fast and furious, and I don't mean the driving movie. Chris the Goat wants to know if Jordan Hancock has had playing time. I've seen him out there in some late moments. Tom, Tony?
Yeah,
I think he played like 12 snaps or so.
Yeah, I have some shots of him at Rutgers. So he's played a little bit. He's someone who, had he been in for the spring like Denzel Burke was, I'd be interested to see where he is right now. Jalen Johnson too, but Jalen Johnson's had some injury stuff. But, Jordan Hancock, if he had been in for the spring, I think, I don't know if I would expect him to be playing as much and as well as Denzel Burke, because that's kind of ridiculous to put on any true freshman, but I think you'd be seeing more of him. He's someone who, we'll go into next spring with, the spring football where we do the guys we're most excited to see this spring. He's going to be near the top of that list for me because, he's got the ability. He was someone who was very, very highly recruited, and we just haven't seen him yet. But I think that's just a function of when he came in more than anything else.
And real quickly with Yakov's question about the Ohio State beat, I think it is the biggest, largest, widest beat in American sports. I don't know. People talk about the Yankees or whatever, and it may be big for television. I don't know exactly how large that beat is, but the Ohio State beat is extremely large, and yet it grows, and yet it's also shrinking at times because you like there's no Cincinnati coverage. There's very like sometimes entire cities don't even the Blade stopped covering Ohio State, but just the amount of people here in Columbus that do it, it's immense. It's competitive. It's fun, but yeah, it is very, very large, and it's not always easy to do unique stuff when everybody's getting the same access to the same players.
Let me see. Gary Thomas, I predict Craig Young lines up on the outside, blitzes for a sack, and breaks up 2 screen attempts.
I could definitely see that. That would be a great role for him. Just a guy that goes in, plays on the edge, creates some havoc, uses his athleticism, and they came into the season with such high expectations for him and wanting to do so many different things with him. Then you start playing and you realize, gosh, Ronnie Hickman can do all this stuff. You see Craig Young play on short yardage downs. He comes in, Teote comes in, and Ronnie Hickman and maybe somebody else comes off. But now they're trying to find ways to get him involved. That would be one where if you're having issues rushing the passer from the edges, and you are, maybe you do something with him and just try some stuff out, make some quarterbacks uncomfortable. And right now you're doing stuff that hasn't been seen on film, so that might help as well.
And he's someone who we came into the year expecting to be like, he was going to be the bullet and Ronnie Hickman was going to be behind him. And now Ronnie Hickman is basically the bullet, and the bullet is as Ross Fulton. If you want to hear a more in-depth conversation with smarter people than us, you can listen to Ross Fulton talk to me about all of this stuff on the Morning Scoop episode that dropped on Friday morning. Just go to the front page of BuckeyeScoop.com and look for I think I titled it something about, is the Ohio State defense really fixed before Maryland, or something like that. But there's a picture of Ronnie Hickman in there, so that'll be easy to find on that post. You can listen to the podcast or watch it on YouTube. But Hickman is someone who we came into the year expecting to be that bullet. Now Young is someone we came into the year expecting to be that bullet. Hickman has kind of seized that role. That's now, as Ross told me, that's sort of the boundary safety role. That's the deep safety that plays on the boundary side in a lot of cases for them. And now it's like, okay, now they got to find something else for Young to do, because that's not really Young's role. He looks like he's shifting into maybe more of a linebacker role. So yeah, maybe that's a pass rush spot. Maybe that's a cover backs out of the backfield kind of spot, or cover tight ends, because he is a super athletic dude and a big enough guy that he probably can cover tight ends. So I think you're going to see that role kind of continue to shift for him. He's someone who's athletic enough that they like a lot. They're going to find a spot for him. It's just sort of a matter of, okay, the defense looks a little different than we thought it was going to last month. Now we got to shift some guys around and find another role for him.
All right, we got 5 in the queue, 3 of them by the same guy. As long as we don't get any new ones or last second super chat contributions, these should be the last 5, but you obviously move to the head of the queue if you dig deep. Sam Maloney, will there be a running back transfer?
Well, here's the thing. Master Teague, this is his 4th year. So a lot of these guys who are in their 4th year, they just, like Mike Weber, you've been in college long enough, and so you go pro. Or, like, again, we don't like to mention names, but I don't think Ohio State returns with the same number of running backs. Like, I don't think everybody playing this year is back next year, whether that's because T goes to the NFL or he sticks around, or somebody else leaves. There's just too many guys right now, and that's you see a freshman take over, and that's going to cause a lot of guys behind him to be like, well, there goes my shot. I'm not going to get the 15 to 20 carries. Am I going to be happy getting 5 to 8 carries? And I don't know that anybody that signs to play running back at Ohio State is going to be happy getting 5 to 8 carries. So then I do think you're going to see some guys end up leaving. That's just the nature of the business. And then you multiply that by having TreyVion Henderson taking over the job.
Sticking with the running backs, throw this one to Tom. with how Trey has been performing, what would his stats be on 25 carries a game?
Yeah, that's sort of the $64,000 question, isn't it? Because he's probably not averaging 9 point whatever yards per carry on that many. Probably, but maybe sometimes he is. He just, I think if he's getting 25 carries a game, I think he's very consistently in that 175-ish yard range. I mean, that's 7 per. So you're not, his numbers have been a little bit skewed just because of a couple big ones he's hit and, a relatively small denominator. But, against Tulsa, he had 270 on 28 carries, something like that, 27 carries. I mean, it's not unthinkable that he could stay in that 9-ish range. But yeah, I mean, 25 carries a game, I'd say 175 to 200 yards a game. And, I mean, at some point, the real answer there is that's great on paper. 25 carries a game. This guy didn't play last year. True freshman, has not been in the strength program that long. Eventually, those numbers are going to come down just because he's going to wear down at some point. I mean, that's a lot. That's a big load to put on someone's shoulders. I mean, Alabama has done that with certain, sort of their big running backs over the years. But, he is not quite Derrick Henry yet in terms of his build. So that would take a little while before he's strong enough to do that every single week and take that kind of pounding. So yeah, I mean, I think on average 175 to 200 yards, but realistically that number sort of tapers down as he sort of wears down and potentially gets injured just from a really, really, really heavy workload for a true freshman.
Chris the Goat wanting to know if Tyleik Williams has gotten into the starting rotation yet, or is he already? He's. I think we put too much on who's out there the first play. They rotate guys so much. Does it really matter who's out there play one of series one? I don't. It's not a case of, well, you're not out there until garbage time or whatnot. When we're looking at how the offense or the defensive line rotates, Tyleik Williams is very much in the mix. A guy who kind of got a little fat and happy during COVID by the admission of the coaches. He's dropped some weight. Certainly has some work to do. Don't we all? But he's getting there. Anybody else have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, he's played about, I don't know, like 23 snaps, 24 snaps a game the last 3 games. So he's plenty involved, but do expect him to be more involved. Does he start? It wouldn't shock me if he ends up starting a game or two this season. They've got a bunch of seniors there at those positions, though, so maybe they like the role he's in right now. But I don't think you can go wrong by playing him more. I wonder, though, does that lessen his impact? Does it in the fourth quarter, in the third quarter, when he's maybe a little more tired, is he less effective? And they definitely want to keep him more effective, but that's also why they rotate them and try to keep them limited in terms of number of snaps.
And one last question. I was trying to get to the record book, but has Ohio State ever had a season where 2 players finished the season with double-digit sacks? And I'm still sitting here on the front page of the Ohio State website.
I'd say Matt Finkes and Mike Vrabel around 94, 95.
I feel like that's right.
Andy Katzenmoyer also had double-digit sacks as a freshman in 96, and I'm sure Vrabel did that year as well. So it might have been a couple of times there in the mid-90s when they did it. If you could just scroll and look for all-time sack leader seasons, you'll probably see Finkes and Vrabel and Katzenmoyer all in there, jumbled together in the 95, 96 era. So I'm just talking until Kevin gets to that point.
I know, and every time that I go back to the page, they make it less usable. So I'm quarterback same season. Right. Vrabel had 13 in 85, but nobody else in 95 was there. 94, Vrabel had his 12 and Finkes had 11. I think 94 would probably be the last time because there have only been 10 guys who have recorded double-digit sacks in a season. 3 guys at 10.5 with Chase Young, Will Smith, and Jason Simmons, and then of course 16.5 being your record in 2019.
It's just unfortunate we never got to see the Bosa brothers play together. I'm not blaming anybody. Mm-hmm. I guess I'm kind of blaming Joey Bosa on that one, but whatever.
I'm jumping in here. Treasure the Torah, I'm going to Home Depot as soon as I get off this call. I'm going to take some of that super chat money. I'm going to buy an extension cord. I promise. I promise. Tom's already making me, he's very mean, making me bring a still camera and everything else. So I might need somebody to help me carry my gear, Tony.
Look, I'm here for everybody. I will help whatever. As long as I can carry that stuff downstairs without leaving the press box, I'm more than happy to do it. I'm here for you.
Razmataz, I like the way you think. Another super chat contribution, beer or a battery or a cord, love it. I'm going to Home Depot. That's where you can find me. I'll be wandering around looking for the extension cords after this show.
While drinking some beer
They sell
in the
beer at Home
store.
Depot.
And eating that pizza. Sorry, no super chat money for you.
Thank you, everybody. That was a fun one. We probably do need to get out of here, though. Seriously, though, thank you guys for the contributions, questions. Thank you for the super chats. I think we're going to do this more as the season goes on because it's we like to talk football. We like to talk to you guys, and you guys love to listen to us. I mean, let's be honest. But thank you guys for tuning in. As always, check out BuckeyeScoop.com. If you are not yet a member, please check it out. Become a member for a month. See if you like it. You can find us there on the Ask the Insiders board with a ton of other insiders as well. If you are currently a member, thank you for that as always. And if you are obviously watching this on YouTube right now and you're not yet subscribed, just go ahead and click the bell, get notified when we drop new interviews, new podcasts, go live like this. That way you'll be able to catch us from the outset. So thank you guys, and we will talk to you later.